So this is the Georgian Military Highway. So the Russian border is not far that way. The road could close again and we might not be able to get to Kazbegi because, as you can see from the mountains around us, it's proper like avalanche territory. Good morning from Tbilisi. So right now I'm in the capital of Georgia, in the spirit of frontiers that this channel is all about. We're heading up to the Georgian-Russian border. So from Tbilisi, I'm going to be taking the Georgian Military Highway. It's the main road that leads from the capital north to the Russian border. Stretching for roughly 212 kilometers from Tbilisi to Vladikavkaz in Russia's North Ossetia region, the Georgian Military Highway cuts through the Caucasus Mountains, following river valleys and high passes that have channeled the movement of people and armies for centuries. The highway is one of the few passable routes between modern Georgia and Russia, but long before the road was paved, the path was vital to ancient trade routes and migration networks stretching back millennia. Its heavy militarization began in earnest after Russia annexed the Georgian kingdom in the late 18th century. The Russian Empire modernized and paved this ancient route, turning it into a military road suitable for moving troops, artillery and supplies into the Caucasus. The road is flanked by the remnants of empires, including fortifications like Ananuri and the forlorn Russian-Georgian Friendship Memorial, built by the Soviets in the dying years of the USSR. After passing the ski resorts of Gudauri, the road climbs the fabled Jvari Pass, reaching an altitude of 2,379 meters as Mount Kazbegi looms high above. In winter and in spring, when the snow melts, the road can be treacherous. The road descends into the Kazbegi Valley. The final stop before the Russian border is Stepantsminda, or Kazbegi, just a few kilometers from the checkpoint at Lasi and home to the spectacular Gegeti Trinity Church. My plan was to journey along the Georgian Military Highway north to the Russian border in an effort to understand the geopolitical and strategic importance this ancient mountain road still holds today. Walking through the center of Tbilisi on Rustaveli Avenue, so the main street, heading to the big bicycle monument. So we booked onto a sort of minibus tour that takes tourists up to Kazbegi. I'm hoping the bus is running today because yesterday and for the last couple of days, it's been no-go basically. There were avalanches up in the mountains which were blocking the highway, and this is the main road to Russia as well. I was told that last night the road had finally opened after a couple of days of closures. So I'm hoping it's not going to turn into another disaster travel trip, and that I can show you the mountains that form the border with Russia. Now, the road itself is only about 150 kilometers long. Now, the journey itself, looking at Google Maps, should take about 2.5 hours with no traffic. I don't think that's going to be the case. Anyway, we're stopping off at a few points on the way, a couple of viewpoints, and the Russian-Georgian Friendship Memorial, which should be quite interesting given the current political climate. And it's a nice warm day in Tbilisi, but I don't know what it's going to be like as we get to a higher altitude. It's the end of April, it's almost May, and for the roads to be closed shows you just how severe the weather must have been. And given it's the main highway up to the mountains, like one of the major crossings to Russia, I believe there are 3 major crossings, you'd think that they'd try their best to keep this one open. I was actually here in Georgia a year ago before I started making videos, and we went up to the Svaneti Mountains, which are a longer way from Tbilisi, about 7 hours at least. And they told us then that the roads were open, and we got caught in these dangerous avalanches and trapped between snowfalls. And it ended up taking about 14, 15, 16 hours to get up to the mountains after we got dug out by snowplows. Now, this road up to Kazbegi is a little bit nicer. It's more of a main road, a highway. So I'm hoping that it's a bit of an easier journey than that one was. All right, so we found the big bicycle monument and we are on the go. So apparently the road was closed for 4 days before this because of avalanches, and they think it's open now, but we'll find out when we get there. Knock off North Face.
South Face.
South Face. So we've just made it to the first stop on the Georgian Military Highway, about an hour's drive from Tbilisi. And check this out. Wow. So this is the Zhinvali Reservoir. And our guide, Hercules, who's taking us up the mountains, was saying that this is basically a man-made reservoir made in the Soviet era. If you were to dive underwater, you'd find submerged houses because all the villagers were basically moved out to make way for this dam. And this dam now feeds with mountain water pretty much the entirety of Tbilisi, giving them fresh, clean and free water. And so far the road's been fine. There's been lots of traffic, lots of trucks parked up because they're all backlogged. So we're going to be following that road behind me, basically, up into the mountains. And hopefully by the end of the day, the bus driver and the guide was just basically saying if and when we make it to Kazbegi. So he wasn't hedging his bets. So I feel like they're going to take us up as high as they can and see how the road is. But I'm staying up there tonight, got a hotel booked. So I'm hoping we do make it. But yeah, this is a glorious reservoir. Look at that. It's going to be getting colder as we get higher up, but you can pick up all of your knockoff North Face jackets before you head up to Kazbegi. All right, so we're in the second spot on the Georgian Military Highway, which is Ananuri Fortress, a fortification built on the crossroads to control the road between Russia and Georgia, the road from Europe into the Caucasus, and then from here into Persia, Turkey, and the old Silk Road. So they built these big span towers behind me, which I've seen up in the mountains before, and they were built as like watchtowers or guard houses to watch the road, the most important road heading towards Russia to the mountains. So for centuries this has been a crossroads, a vital intersection and point where empires and peoples have met. And in the sort of 18th century, when Georgia was kind of under the suzerainty of the Persians, the Russians then came in down this highway, and the rest is history. As a lot of Georgians will tell you, since that moment when the Russians came in, they've since been under sort of Russian occupation for a long time, and now under sort of the yoke of the Russians still. Because the border is just, about 50 miles away now. And yeah, in the middle of the fortress, you've got this old span tower here, and then this is a church. So this is the reservoir, which is dry at the moment, but the road on the right hand side is the old military highway, which was replaced by the more modern one that we're driving on at the moment. So that's the road we've arrived on. That's like the new road, or not really new, but built by the Russians and then sort of probably expanded by the Soviets, etc., purely for the purpose of controlling Georgia, controlling the Caucasus. So this road eventually, as we drove up, goes to Tbilisi, and then from there you're at the crossroads really of Asia, Europe, Russia, Turkey, Persia, what's Iran now, and the Black Sea. So if you control this mountain road down to Tbilisi, down to the capital, you control the entrance and exit to the Caucasus really. So there you go, you can see the fortress walls and the church behind me. The church has now been restored, but for a long time during the Soviet era it kind of lay derelict, a lot like this smaller church behind me, which hasn't been repaired yet. And when you go inside the church, the walls are completely almost whitewashed. They're starting to bring back a lot of the colourful frescoes that used to be there, but the Soviets obviously were very anti-religion. They wanted you to believe in the party, not believe in any sort of Christian or Islamic or any other religion other than the dictator, the leader of the party and the party itself. So they destroyed a lot of the religious heritage, destroyed a lot of the frescoes and the icons. But the Georgians are now bringing them back. And cool, there's a nice little lakeside bar as well, where you can get some cha-cha in front of the abandoned buildings. So I was told that the reservoir that we visited was home to a lot of people before it became a reservoir, and a lot of the towns and the villages were all vacated forcibly. People were evicted by the Soviets to make way for it. And I think because the reservoir comes up to here at certain points when it floods, these would have been in the firing line, basically, these houses. So I think these would have been where people would have lived and they were forced out, and now they're still just here, abandoned. Oh, it's Georgia, so there's dogs everywhere. Hey, buddy. If you ever come to Georgia, you'll know there's dogs everywhere. All the strays are tagged though, and they're all kind of looked after by the government, which is quite amazing. So you'll see them running around, and they've all been vaccinated, and they're all kind of well cared for, and they get a lot of treats from the visitors too. All right, fortress complete. Going to continue north along the Georgian Military Highway. So we just stopped for lunch, about halfway up the mountain, and you can tell we're in a border territory because all of these trucks are just whizzing past. It's been like a constant stream of lorries, and there's loads of like customs officers as well, just hanging out at this little roadside restaurant. So I guess they're heading up to the border, or they just come down from the border. But yeah, getting closer, and yeah, still haven't hit any snow, but I think we're going to hit that soon. So let's go. From Ananuri, the road got busier and busier. After days of closures due to the threat of avalanches, there were trucks from Turkey, Russia, Iran, Azerbaijan, from as far afield as China and Poland. Points we were crawling along the road. We slowed to a halt, but I was told that many of the truck drivers can wait here days, waiting for their clearance from customs before they're allowed to continue up through the mountain passes to Russia. The Georgian Military Highway climbed ever higher. The mountain peaks rose above us, finally snow-capped, and after enduring the winding, stomach-churning roads, we finally made it to Gudauri, our next stop along the Georgian Military Highway. Alright, so we made it to 2,200 meters altitude, and we're in a place called Gudauri, which is where the ski resorts are in Georgia. So it's a couple of hours drive north of Tbilisi, and then we're not far from the Russian border now. And I'll show you some of the footage that I was taking on the way up, but there's been like huge tailbacks on the road. You can see we're finally seeing the snow, but before we got to this point, there was just long queues of trucks and lorries just waiting to pass through, because all of this has been avalanche prone for the last couple of days. For the last 4 days when it was closed, nothing was getting through here. December to April, you can come up here and you can ski. And now we're heading a little bit further up into the mountains this way. All right, so 10 minutes up the road from Gudauri, and we made it to the Russian-Georgian Friendship Memorial. So the Russian border is not far that way. Kazbegi is maybe another 40-minute drive in good conditions, but the tour guide that we're with was saying that we need to have a quick stop because the road could close again and we might not be able to get to Kazbegi, because as you can see from the mountains around us, it's proper like avalanche territory, like in the last couple of weeks, because the snow is starting to melt and the sun is shining, and it's avalanche season. Of course, proper busy because this has been the first day the road's been open in a couple of days. Yeah, everyone else is out frolicking in the snow, throwing snowballs. But this is what I'm here for, the Georgian-Russian Friendship Memorial. Now, this was built and unveiled in 1983, and it marked the 200-year anniversary of a treaty between Russia and Georgia, which effectively made Georgia a protectorate of the Russian Empire and then the Soviet Union for the next 200 years until they finally got independence in the early 1990s. Now, since then, of course, relations between Russia and Georgia, the independent Georgia that came after the fall of the Soviet Union, have been fractured. On this side of the mountains over this way to the west, you've got a place called South Ossetia. And South Ossetia was basically a breakaway territory of Georgia, the breakaway republic, and the territory broke away from Georgia during the fall of the Soviet Union, and they've been a sort of self-declared, unrecognized nation state ever since. That should be South Ossetia. It's officially part of Georgia, but they're technically a de facto breakaway territory. Got some snowmobiles coming around. Now, no one apart from 5 other countries and unrecognized countries, including places like Abkhazia and Russia, recognize the independence of South Ossetia. As far as Georgia is concerned, the territory over the west to the mountains is officially part of Georgia. But as you can see, there's no way over these mountains. And the border in the south, where I'll be heading in a few days, near Gudauri, is completely closed off. So the only way to get in there or out is through Russia. Now, it's kind of ironic that the Russian-Georgia Friendship Memorial is here within sight of the self-declared Republic of South Ossetia, because the breakaway territories in Georgia are one of the reasons why relations between the two countries fractured so much. And here it is up close, the memorial. This side is the Georgian story. You got St. George slaying the dragon. And then this side is the Russian or Soviet story. So yeah, that is Ossetia over the mountains. Russia that way. Georgia, although technically Georgia is still over there as well. And yeah, in 2006, the Russians basically closed the entire border that's just north of here. And there was a lot of economic sanctions on Georgia from the Russians. They embargoed Georgian wine as Georgia kind of pushed to become more European, part of the European, something that it's continued to do. Although recently with all the protests in Tbilisi, with the Georgian Dream Party, parts of Georgia are pushing back towards being Russian. It's a confusing time to be a Georgian, I think. But in 2008, there was a full-on war between South Ossetia, Georgia, and of course the Russians, when Georgia proper was invaded. So okay, that was the Russian-Georgian Friendship Memorial, a tribute to what could have been. Right, so now we're going to carry on up this road, up the Georgian Military Highway. All right, we might have trouble getting up the mountain. Look at this. But just ahead now is the Jvari Pass, which sits at 2,400 meters, and that's the pass that's been used for centuries by invaders coming south from Russia. Mayhem around there. The Jvari Pass is the pass that's been used for centuries to basically as an entrance to Georgia and then on to Persia or Turkey and Europe. Luckily, the Jvari Pass was open. The mountain slopes were reefed in snow and the remnants of avalanches still littered the roadside. An hour later, and 7 hours after setting out from Tbilisi, we finally made it to Kazbegi, or Stepantsminda. In the last Georgian town before you meet the Russian border, we transferred to four-wheel drive vehicles for a final winding journey to Gergeti Trinity Church. So we made it along the Georgian Military Highway to Kazbegi. And so at the bottom of the hill in Kazbegi, you transfer to like a four-wheel drive vehicle, because the only way to get up the steep turns covered in snow is in one of the local four-wheel drives. But we made it to the top, and you can see Gergeti Trinity Cathedral behind me. And then this way in the distance, that is Mount Kazbek. That is one of the tallest mountains in the Caucasus region. It's around 5,000 meters, perhaps higher. And then just 10 kilometers in that direction is the Russian border. Proper frontier. This is a borderline. This way is Georgia, and then this way is Russia, North Ossetia. So right now we're spending the night here in Kazbegi, but the rest of the group that came up in the minibuses, you can book tours for like 15 quid and you get transport up here and you stop off all the way. It's really good. Just don't get your guide. It's not sponsored. Everyone else needs to get back down to Tbilisi, and there's just huge queues at the moment. So we've got about half an hour at the top here before we're back on the road. But luckily we've got a nice stay in Kazbegi before we make the return journey tomorrow, which is what I'd recommend doing. Otherwise you wouldn't be back in Tbilisi until about 10 or 11 at night. It's a long fucking day. Amazing though, you can walk up from the car park at the top of the hill to the monastery on top, which stands proudly over Kazbegi town. Come all this way, so let's take a peek inside. And this is Kazbegi town, the last town in Georgia. All right, church complete. Now it's time to head back down and then head in to Kazbegi. All right, it's a hectic day coming up the mountain on the journey to the Georgian-Russian border on the Georgian Military Highway. But I made it here to Rooms, which is probably the most famous hotel in Kazbegi. And I think it used to be an old Soviet sanatorium. It's probably the most expensive hotel in the mountains. But I'm treating myself to at least one night of luxury after that ride. And yeah, sweeping view of the valley. So that way, directly behind me, is Russia. So yeah, the sun is setting over the mountains, over the Caucasus Mountains. What a spot to end the journey along the Georgian Military Highway. The ancient road traversed by armies, Russians, Georgians, Persians as well, in their efforts to conquer what is the crossroads of Europe and Asia. As far as journeys to borders go, this one is fairly easy to organise. You can literally just hop on a group tour and get up here, as I did, and it costs 15 quid. I think it's nothing at all. But in terms of actually crossing that border, this is the kind of border where unless you're Georgian, Russian, or have a passport that allows you to travel easily in Russia, then it's not somewhere you're going to be crossing over anytime soon, at least, thanks to the wider conflicts. So I think this is the perfect spot to end this video with my journey along the Georgian Military Highway. Thank you for watching.